The Clone Wars continue. And now, young Season 2, you will be finished. Come with me as I continue to watch through The Clone Wars for the first time. Well, hello there. My name's Jeremy and welcome back to Freeform Disney, where I talk about all aspects of Disney, from the animated movies to the theme parks to Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar, and the TV shows, and everything else in between. And that is why it's Freeform. And keep coming back every day for new daily content. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Welcome back again. It's time to finish talking about Season 2 of The Clone Wars. If you recall, I loved the first half of Season 2, and I tease that my favorite episodes so far of the entire series will come here in the back half. Well, off we go. First off, we have Brain Invaders. Now, this is really the final piece of an arc from before, the whole Geonosian arc, although it's really kind of its own episode too, in a way. But it does have a lead-in from our whole Geonosian queen with her little brain-invading bugs that go take you over, especially zombify people, and the whole zombie attack. Dun dun dun. So what are we up to in Brain Invaders? Well, this one is a heavy Ahsoka episode, and Barriss too, because she's right there with her the whole time. Except when she's trying to kill Ahsoka, because she's being controlled by the bugs. Except for that little piece. So our whole premise for this one is that there's a distress signal from Mace Windu over on Dantooine, and so they've got to go get medical supplies near Ord Cestus. But, meanwhile, the Jedi Masters are going to take Poggle to Coruscant. Sorry, you can't even spare one of them to go ahead and head on this rescue mission. Padawans only. Not that I'm complaining. Whatever the excuse is that we needed to make it works for me. So we definitely continue a little bit of the horror tropes in this one, which is unsurprising considering what we're talking about. Oh, by the way, these whole parasites in the head, the brain invaders. Now, if any Stargate fans are out there, dang if it doesn't make me think of the Goa'uld just a little bit. Although the Goa'uld are definitely cooler, but still, you get the idea. If I've got any Stargate SG-1 fans, let me know down below, I'm just curious. Tell me if you see the same thing as me or if I'm crazy. Okay, back to this episode and off of Stargate SG-1, which is not Disney at all anyway. So Ahsoka has this little line of, "My master will always do what needs to be done. I'm not even sure peacetime will agree with them." Yeah, no kidding. Painful right there. Painfully right. Of course, then Obi-Wan's got his own little piece here. "Sometimes I don't think you realize how alike you two have become." Yeah, Ahsoka takes after Anakin quite a lot. Very fitting Padawan in that sense, right? Oh, and hey, Kit Fisto pops up a little bit in this episode because he's the one who's over at that medical facility that they're going to go get the supplies from. So he pops in a little bit. Not a ton, but enough to see him. Okay, so Barriss, as I mentioned earlier, gets one of those parasite worms, a Goa'uld, shall we say, up in her head. And then we get all this cool fighting between Ahsoka and Barriss, and it's a ton of fun, frankly. Meanwhile, Anakin finds out about what's going on. And, well, Anakin flips out. He is definitely going to go ahead and find a way to save Ahsoka. And the Jedi are having trouble getting any kind of information out of Poggle. Well, guess what? Anakin has, shall we say, some different techniques? So Anakin force chokes Poggle. Love where we're taking this. I mean, this is Anakin. This is him giving in to the dark side to go save the ones he loves. Which, yeah. I mean, that was just one of the moments of the season there. Just getting to really watch Anakin and how far he was willing to go. As we know he will, of course. So that leads us to the end of the episode where we really end on this question of, is letting attachments reign supreme the right choice? Which, by the way, kind of goes back to the beginning where we had this quote at the beginning that was incredibly relevant this time, where we said, attachment is not compassion. Kind of taking a little jab at Anakin there with that line. Okay, let's move right on up to the next one. We've got a kind of a two-partier kind of thing going on right here. So this one is Grievous Intrigue. So we're going to go try to capture General Grievous. And frankly, they have all these problems of not being able to predict where Grievous will strike until now. Because guess what? Grievous has gone ahead and started targeting members of the Jedi Council, and he's got Eeth Koth. And really, he's kind of laying a trap, but the Jedi think they're laying a trap for him. It's a whole thing of everyone thinking they're laying a trap for each other. And so they go off to Salakome, and Anakin's going to go sneak on to the ship to rescue good old Koth, while Obi-Wan is busy distracting Grievous and is going to have a big old fight with him. And oh hey, we also have Master Gallia in here this time, so that's cool. And Admiral Yularen is back again. I always like seeing Admiral Yularen, or Commander Yularen, depending on what he was called before, but hey, he's an Admiral now. So there were some good interactions between Obi-Wan Kenobi and General Grievous in here. I mean, we had some fun stuff from Grievous first off. So, Kenobi, is everything according to plan? That depends on your point of view, General. Yeah, especially when you know his point of view is, oh yeah, most certainly it is. And then Obi-Wan gets back at him, calls him Dooku's errand boy. To which Grievous is like, no, me, an errand boy. What the hell are you talking about, man? I ain't no one's errand boy. I'm not here for Dooku's politics. I command the greatest droid army in the known galaxy. Oh, and you're going to question what I have to gain from having that big old droid army? Well, guess what? I'm going to end the Jedi. There's Grievous. Back to giving us some more insight on Grievous, and I love it. I also love the verbal swordplay between the two. Always fun. Heck, the actual swordplay, also pretty good. I mean, ultimately, it was a good episode. There were some enjoyable fights in it. There was some insight into Grievous as a character. We had a fun new character pop up that we didn't know yet when we saw Jedi Master Gallia. Oh, and Koth I don't think has popped up in this series either yet. So, cool stuff. And well-paced. Let's move right on. Now, this next episode, The Deserter. Now, it's kind of a continuation of the one before, but that's not really the important part of this episode. At least not to me. It's kind of the B plot line as opposed to our main plot. So let's start with that B plot line. So Obi-Wan Kenobi goes down to the planet chasing him. And we also go ahead and bring along people like Rex and the clones, of course, too. And so it's a cool looking planet. Actually, some cool bulbous plants and trees on there. And heck, you've got these trees that are also kind of like those fake Christmas tree things if you've ever seen them. I don't know how to describe them, but you can see these. If that means anything to you, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, and I do have to say, the droids are back to being a little more annoying this episode, sadly. Well, what can you do? Can't always have everything be great, right? And we're more than make up for that with all the good stuff in this episode. So in the course of chasing Grievous and having to fight droids and all the rest of that, Rex gets badly injured by a sniper. So they leave him to rest over at a farm, and this is an alien planet farm with a pink Twi'lek. And they've got blue and orange Twi'lek kids. And then the kid makes this little comment that, hey, you look a lot like my father, Rex. Dun dun dun. What could that mean? Could it be another clone? Well, of course it is. And so yeah, it's definitely another clone. And this is really the A plot line. This is the heart of this episode, is Rex and Cut Lawquane, the other clone and the name he took. So Cut Lawquane is a deserter. He has this big piece about having the freedom to choose what he wants to do with his life. And he chooses not to kill. Now, this plays right against Rex, who is so by the books. So we have this conflict perfectly set up. And I love it. This is so well done. And I love getting more into the clones and the issues involved there and really showing how they are people and the philosophical and ethical issues of how we treat the clones in the Republic. And this episode has it in spades, of course. So, interesting things off the bat. Well, talking about why do the clones have names like Rex or Cody? This has much more to do with the Jedi and the other people in the Republic who like to refer to them. Because they don't like to use the numbers and letters as much. They like to think of them as people, at least to some degree. So, Cut Lawquane. He apparently was in the original Geonosian battle, and his entire company gets killed. So there he is, off by himself in the end of that, in a war that he thinks no longer makes any dang sense. And that, what's the use of being a clone? He's just going to get killed eventually anyway. That's the whole purpose of his life. And that just wasn't enough for him. So he deserted. And eventually he ends up at this planet. And well, he chooses an entirely new life. And here's a question. Why is that not okay for him? Clones who have never been given the choice. certainly they're sentient beings, aren't they? And we have essentially okayed slavery, but we don't think about the fact that it is slavery. But it certainly is. And this episode starts to really touch into that. And I can't wait to see where the show keeps going on that topic. So what else happens? Well, I think Cut started to get through a little bit to Rex. And that line to Rex about the fact that Rex has a name too, I think that helped. But it's not until after we have this whole fight over at the farm, because the kids found this whole escape pod with commando droids in it, although they're damaged and low power, so not too dangerous. So we have this whole defend the farm thing ensue, and hey, nobody dies, they all succeed, but Cut does a whole lot of the defense, and that impresses good old Rex. And really that whole fight exists just for the purpose of getting to let Cut do that defense and getting to impress Rex that way. So, it's transparent, but it serves its purpose, right? And so the ending piece between the two of them is Rex is heading out there and telling Cut, well, I am obligated to report it, his desertion and the fact he's there. But in my condition, I'm likely not to remember anything. ... And Rex saying, you're certainly a deserter, Cut, but you're not a coward. So Rex ends up giving some grudging respect over to Cut. We'll see what that becomes later for Rex as the series continues. I'm sure it's going to come back up later. Oh, and that whole B-plot line, Grievous gets away in the end. Big ol' fight. It does its thing. It's just there to kind of give us something else to cut to while we're going ahead and looking at Cut and Rex. Now, we will admit the Grievous parts are the weak part of the episode, and to be honest, I would be perfectly fine if they didn't exist in this episode at all and it was all about Cut and Rex. But hey, it was still a really good episode right there. On to the next episode, which is Lightsaber Lost. Now, I'm not going to tell you it's the greatest episode in the world, because it's not. I mean, I wish it was better, and there's certainly some good elements in it. The idea of this one is that, well, Ahsoka's lightsaber gets lifted from her when the crowd rushes out, and Ahsoka sure as heck doesn't want any lecture from Anakin about, this lightsaber is your life. Try not to lose it. I seem to remember that lecture being given by someone else to Anakin. Who was it? Oh, yes, Obi-Wan. So instead, Ahsoka hides it and is going to try to go ahead and get it back on her own. But she ends up running into Master Sanube, a new Jedi to us. He's this older alien, and he's an expert on the underworld. And he goes with Ahsoka on her giant long quest to go find her lightsaber. And the quest goes from one place to another. One thing that was cool about this, though, was definitely getting to see more of Coruscant. Really has a bit of a Blade Runner-y kind of feel going on to it. So that was nice. So what else to really talk about on this one? Well, we've got this whole piece going from one place to another as we slowly work our way to finding this. We meet some interesting aliens. We find a crime lord who got murdered, but we don't really get into the whole ethical issues of why she murdered him or anything else like that. We do end up capturing her by the end, and that's really about as much as we get into it. And the lesson of the day is that the old Jedi knows what the heck he's talking about. Slow is good. After all, he can see the way ahead. So we have this whole big lesson in patience. So there's some interesting stuff in here, but let's be honest, it really feels like a filler episode that will probably have no plot, story, or character impact at all in the long run on the show. That's certainly what it feels like. That said, to be honest, when it started out, I worried that it was not going to be as good as it was, so there is definitely that. Okay, here's something I've been waiting to talk about. Upcoming next, we have the Duchess of Mandalore's 3-episode arc. I'm calling it the Duchess of Mandalore arc. I'm not sure if there's a more official name, but that's what I'm going with. And this is good. So we start the first episode off with one titled The Mandalore Plot. And Duchess Satine of Mandalore seems to be the leader of this Council for Neutral Systems that want to stay neutral and out of the whole Republic separatist war. Off the bat, let me go comment. Satine, huh? I'm not sure what the origin of the name is, if it's older than Moulin Rouge or not. I just can't help to go ahead and wonder about that, especially as Ewan McGregor played Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequels. Is Satine put in there as an ex-love interest for Obi-Wan Kenobi? Coincidental or intentional? I could definitely see that one being intentional. Winking reference over there. So the Republic is worried about Mandalore. Are they building their own army to then support the Separatists? This whole neutrality is just fake, right? So Obi-Wan gets sent off to Mandalore to investigate. I have to say we almost set up Prime Minister Almich almost as if he's this decoy bad guy off the bat. Just because we don't know enough and you're looking for somebody somewhere. So we get this interesting backstory here about Mandalore's violent past, how they had their big civil war and sent all the warriors off to be exiled to the moon Concordia. But they died out years ago. There's no warrior Mandalorians on Concordia anymore. Of course not. Well, we all know better than that now, don't we? And then we introduce our new group, our group of Mandalorian warriors that are our bad guys, our shadowy warriors, called Death Watch. So they're a movement for the old ways and violence. And so the whole plot of this arc is really to get the Republic to commit peacekeeping troops to Mandalore so the people will end up rebelling against the Republic and then welcoming in Death Watch and the Separatists. This is definitely Dooku's plot. And we will be seeing him a little bit throughout this. Never in any super involved way, but off in the background manipulating things. Over on Mandalore, we've got a conversation I love in there, right before this big terrorist attack. And this, by the way, happens throughout this episode and certainly the next one as well and whatnot. We get this verbal sparring between Obi-Wan and Satine, and it's a great way of critiquing some of where the Jedi are in this, as well as looking from the Jedi's perspective as well. So in here we have Obi-Wan saying, a peacekeeper belongs on the front lines of conflict. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to do his job. Satine, on the other hand, says, the work of a peacekeeper is to make sure that conflict does not arise. Yes, a noble description, but not a realistic one. Is reality what makes a Jedi abandon his ideals? Or is it simply a response to political convenience? Ooh, deep cut right there. Not that Obi-Wan can see it, because he is just too dogmatically stuck in his own views to see it. But isn't she right? Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. There's a whole big terrorist attack over on Mandalore, and then the person suicides at the end. So let's go off to Concordia to go look into it and make sure there aren't any bad guys sitting over on that moon. Well, of course they are. And we find this new character, Governor Vizsla of Concordia. And he's most certainly our favorite good guy. Oh, yeah. He just tells him, we've got it all under control over here, but feel free to take a look around. Don't worry, I'll come with you. All that kind of stuff. Yeah, okay. He's the bad guy. Pretty clear. So Obi-Wan sneaks on off to go check out the first and nearest mine to make sure if it's really not active. So when Obi-Wan gets into trouble, Satine is off to go save Obi-Wan by herself. Now I imagine Satine might not have any personal guard so as to not upset the governor of Concordia and inflame tensions. Also, she can kick some ass on her own, so there's a little bit of that. So go Satine. Definitely like Satine. And so we have the reveal. The governor, oh no, he's a bad guy. Never saw it coming. And there's all kinds of Mandalorians here, all members of Death Watch, working to take down the nice pacifist Mandalorians and bring them back to their true roots. Now here's cool. The good old governor, he has the dark saber. And we get a little piece of story there about how it was stolen from the Jedi Temple by his ancestors during the fall of the Old Republic. And I'm sure we're going to talk a little more about Jedi and Mandalorians fighting as we get deeper into this series. So Obi-Wan, unsurprisingly, is a better fighter than the governor. Doesn't matter, buddy, that you got a darksaber. You're up against Obi-Wan. But that said, Obi-Wan kind of gets outnumbered in the end. Screw the honorable combat if we ain't going to go ahead and win this one. So let's bring the rest of the Mandalorians in. And so they make their daring escape back to Mandalore and off of the moon Concordia. This episode, it was really, really good. Loads of potential. There's big lore expansion, great new characters, and there's good pacing. I mean, heck, it's the works. It's got it all. And love the interactions between Obi-Wan and Satine as well. This episode right here, ooh, love it. Now for me, as you may have caught as you've been journeying through this with me, I love my characters and my character interactions, as well as getting into some of those philosophical and ethical issues. Love that too. And I love expansions of lore. And so this one, so far, compared to every episode before, would be my favorite episode of the series. But, we'll move on to the next episode, Voyage of Temptation. Will this one be even better than the one before? Well, I think so. I love this one even more. So now we've got Anakin and Obi-Wan on here, and heck, we've even got Rex and Cody. We've got Satine and some other senators on the ship, because we're taking them all over to Coruscant so Satine can plead her case to the Senate for their neutrality. Now, Obi-Wan and Anakin have a bit of a conversation about Obi-Wan having been close to Satine in the past. And Obi-Wan's a little defensive, shall we say. Just a bit. And their whole little interaction, love it. And Anakin's knowing smile at the end of it. Oh, for Anakin to actually get the upper hand on Obi-Wan, how rarely that happens. It's not like he rubs in it a little bit at all. No. Yeah. Oh, okay, and now we get into Satine versus Obi-Wan. Oh, we've got this whole big interaction between them. And I love it. Satine. I speak for thousands of worlds that have urged me to allow them to stay neutral in this war. And yet some might argue that the strongest defense is a quick and decisive offense. You are quite the general now, aren't you, Master Kenobi? Forgive me for interrupting, Your Highness. I meant no disrespect. Really? Senators, I presume you are acquainted with the collection of half-truths and hyperbole known as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Your Highness is too kind. You're right. I am. And you see the look of hurt on her face. Oh, there's Anakin in the background with his funky knowing smile on his face. Ooh, love the interaction. I mean, it really hints to everything in the past. It also talks about the present and gets at those underpinnings as far as his own corruption for Obi-Wan, who's now, yes, quite the general. Not looking at the whole peacekeeper side that he used to really be. Oh, and that whole verbal argument and fight between Obi-Wan and Satine, it continues. It gets bigger. We keep talking about this, and man, do they explode at each other. And Anakin's bemusement during this whole thing is just too much fun as well. He gets a real kick out of this. And why shouldn't he? This is Anakin, who always has to deal with Obi-Wan, who's trying to act like a father figure but kind of more of a brother, and who is this straight-laced Jedi. Whereas Anakin, certainly is not a straight-laced Jedi. And this is married in secret Anakin over here, who's laughing and smiling about Obi-Wan, Mr. Straight-Laced, who clearly's got a thing for Satine and certainly did in the past too. So not quite as straight-laced as he'd like to claim he is now, is he? And we find out from Obi-Wan that he spent a year on Mandalore when he was younger protecting Satine. And they were always on the run from bounty hunters, not sure what the next day would bring. Sounds kind of romantic. Well, after the Civil War that killed half her people, Satine then stays to rebuild, and, well, Obi-Wan certainly doesn't because, well, that would have been problematic. His duty as a Jedi demanded he be elsewhere, and he has to live by the Jedi Code. After all, Jedi can't have firm attachments. But I love the little piece that Obi-Wan then responds to Anakin after he says that, and says, yes, but he usually leaves out the undercurrent of remorse. This is something I don't think Obi-Wan would usually even be willing to admit out loud. But here in this condition, in this setting where he is confronted with Satine and Anakin sees it all, he actually openly admits that. Wow. Okay, let's keep moving on. So there are all these assassin droids out there, and really we have a fun time with Anakin, Rex, Cody, and R2 taking out assassin droids. All kinds of fun. And I mean, heck, Rex down there kicking ass. I mean, he's double blaster wielding. I mean, really quite a cowboy down there, shall we say. Oh, and up on the top side, Satine goes ahead and defends herself, uses his droid deactivator gun-looking thing. And then Obi-Wan tries to make a snide remark about, oh, I thought you were a pacifist. To which she goes, just because I'm a pacifist doesn't mean I won't defend myself. Yeah, no kidding. That was kind of my problem with the lemurs back in season 1. They were the whole pacifists that apparently won't defend themselves, and not even will they not defend themselves, they wouldn't leave to get out of the way of impending doom. Yeah, no, Satine, much better pacifist. Okay, so let's work our way to the end. Satine gets taken hostage by the traitor senator after he's exposed by Obi-Wan, and so then off goes the traitor with his hostage. Anakin and Obi-Wan meet up, and we get some more fun between them with the whole, hey, you go find your girlfriend. Right. No, she's not. Good times. And then between Satine and Obi-Wan, we find out what we all kind of suspected right there, which is Obi-Wan would have left the Jedi Order for Satine, if she had asked. I mean, short of that, he wasn't going to do it on his own accord, but if she had asked, he would have. Yeah, it certainly seemed like he had feelings that deep there. And then we got one last little piece really here to talk about before we get to the epilogue. So we got to deal with that traitor. Well, that traitor, not only does he have Satine, but he's also got his thumb on a detonator button to blow up the entire ship. And then he's got this whole, who will strike first and brand themselves a cold-blooded killer? Because Satine and Obi-Wan both, they're there ready to go shoot him or, well, run him through with a lightsaber anyway. He's like, you can't murder me, either of you, ha 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 ha. Even though I'm threatening to blow up the ship, you can't do anything to me. Which, by the way, gotta be honest, I think you're allowed to shoot the bastard. You could always shoot to disarm, or, like Obi-Wan loves to do, say slice his arm off. Not sure why that was not an option, so I admit that was not played the best. But that's really made up for, to a degree, by what actually happens and how it finishes. So who does shoot or kill him? Well, neither of them. All of a sudden, a lightsaber pops right through his chest. Guess what? Anakin was there. Boom. Dead. So we get this beautiful bit of a Vader theme playing in the background. Yeah, that Anakin went to that option and not something lesser than that. Definitely deserves a bit of that Vader theme, don't you think? So even if there's a little issue with the whole you can't murder me either of you piece, it's made well more than up for with how that ended. One last little note. Over in the epilogue where we're over on Coruscant, we have another interaction between Satine and Obi-Wan, which really works to mirror what we saw early on in their interaction, show just where they've changed. And I love the beard comment. Nicely done. Loved this episode. My favorite episode of the entire series so far was this one right here. Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Okay, I mean, you've already heard why I did, so let's not keep talking. Let's move on to the next episode, the third one of the three. This one's called Duchess of Mandalore. And now, hey, like it seems to be the usual case, the last one is the weakest episode again. But while I call it the weakest episode, short of the two episodes before, it's one of the best of the entire show. I think it is right on par with all of the other best episodes of the show. So this arc right here, whew, really, really good arc. Okay, so what happens in this one? Well, this is a big, heavy Satine episode, and a little bit of Obi-Wan in here too. So we're down on Coruscant, and some fake partial recording is used by Palpatine to convince the Senate to occupy Mandalore, and to suggest that Satine is hiding the truth of how dire their situation really is from her people. Although, frankly, Palpatine really kind of overplays his hand just a bit right there. And we get some more great interactions between Obi-Wan and Satine in this episode, most certainly. We get to watch Obi-Wan fumble over his words. Obi-Wan, who always seems to know what to say. Yeah, not necessarily when he's verbally sparring with Satine sometimes. Good old Jedi who's foolhardily running around as if he's on a crusade. Yeah, you show him, Satine. So we get this assassination attempt on her, and, well, it fails. She's able to get out of it. But then the vote happens to just go through while she's meeting with Palpatine. I guess the accident just happened to accelerate the vote so much that there was no way she could be there for it. Oh, talking about overplaying the hand a little bit there, Palpy. Just a little bit, bud. Alright, so moving right on. Then Satine goes and meets with an intelligence contact of hers who's going to go give her the full recording in secret. But that contact of hers then gets assassinated by a Mandalorian who's on Coruscant. Dun dun dun. But Satine gets away, although she quickly gets framed for murder. And by the way, dang, she gets away from the police and clones pretty easily, doesn't she? Especially in that distinctive red cloak of hers. Which, by the way, really nice red cloak. Love that. It's cool looking. Oh, and then we see Dooku and Sidious talk a bit here in the episode. That was cool. We don't get to see that happen much at all. So, nice little piece. Here's an interesting one. After Satine brings in Obi-Wan to help her, they get a little conversation because, well, Obi-Wan's going to go ahead and try to bring the recording over into the Senate chambers. But Satine's going to go get herself arrested so as to distract the guards. And Obi-Wan's like, well, that's not necessary. I'm a Jedi. They wouldn't dare to search me. Things are changing, my dear. Oh, aren't they? And by the end of the episode, well, Obi-Wan even starts to realize that things are definitely starting to change a little bit. And seeing that, well, friend and foe, a bit of a blurred line now. I mean, he's sure as heck not to the point of seeing the full level of corruption in the Republic. Oh, and one other interesting little note. While we were over in the Senate, and by the way, it was a nice moving speech when we got to see the full thing. Well done. But one thing that was cool, We saw some other people in the background. We saw the senator from Pantora, back from the episode Trespass back in season 1. I mean, I do want to see more of her. I mean, this is at least a little bit. I hope to see her a lot more than just as a quick cameo in the episode, but that was a nice touch to say, hey, we still remember she exists. And before that, was that Mon Mothma? That certainly looked like that could be the Clone Wars version of Mon Mothma, and I wouldn't be surprised to have her pop up in here at all. She should be. And so really, there you go. It was good. Definitely loved the episode, and definitely looking forward to some more of Obi-Wan and Satine in the future. And I can't imagine we're not going to bring that back up. And also, hey, I want to see some more of Mandalore prior to what happens in the future, prior to the dark times, shall we say. Definitely looking forward to all of that. Okay, folks, we ain't done yet. We may have finished that arc, but there is one more arc to go for Season 2. This is a 3-episode arc of Death Trap, R2 Come Home, and Lethal Trackdown. Now, these episodes definitely varied in quality, let's just say that. So first off, we got Death Trap. And hey, look, it's Boba Fett. That's cool to bring Boba back in. And yes, I mean, I certainly caught who that was right off the bat. And Boba's really got a stick up his ass about Mace Windu having killed his dad. So he is all about murdering Mace Windu. And by the way, Boba, one hell of an impressive shot, by the way. So we're certainly starting to make Boba Fett impressive, even here from a young age. And then heck, Boba Fett ends up taking down an entire cruiser. Dang, man. Oh, and Boba, you may have gone ahead and stunned the trooper rather than killing him because you're all about not killing the guy. That said, when you then went ahead and shot up the engine room, that explosion probably killed the guy. You might have wanted to pull him out, like shove him into an escape pod if you really were all about not killing him. Just because you stunned him and then destroyed the reactors, which then blew up and killed him, doesn't mean you didn't kill the guy. You kind of did. Oh, and hey, this was also my first introduction to Aura Singh. Now, I don't know if she was actually introduced in the other way at the end of season 1, but chronological order, this is my first introduction to her. It feels like she was probably introduced at the end of season 1 in that very last episode that's out of chronological order, just because it doesn't feel like the right introduction. When Jax over there was an interesting young leader. Don't know if we'll see him again, but I wouldn't be super surprised if we did. So this whole episode, I mean, felt very much like setup, and not like a whole lot happened when it really came to it. But I mean, it was still enjoyable as an episode. So I enjoyed it. Let's move on. R2 Come Home. Well, this one is not quite as good. The ever-popular comment that apparently the droid episodes are just not as good. Sadly, it seems to be true here too. So we do have good stuff though. There's some good stuff. We get some interactions between Mace and Anakin. I like a little bit of that. I do have to say, the creatures that are down on the planet, R2 senses them, but the Jedi, 2 of the most powerful Jedi ever, don't sense them at all? It's a little weird, but whatever. Let's move on. But we do get to see the bounty hunters in full now. We get to see Aura Singh, Boba Fett, Bosk is in here, and also Castus, who's kind of like our annoying comic relief or something of that nature, shall we say. Okay, and onward, and hey, yay, mighty R2 stopped the evil, nasty bounty hunters, and is protecting our Jedi that got trapped in a crumbling ship, but they will die without R2's help. So he stops them, and then eventually gets into the ship, and gets away, and moves his way all the way to Coruscant. He escapes those evil bounty hunters. Go R2! And let's not even get into all of the issues there about R2 and what's going on. It's not worth the time, it just isn't. So everything happens, they go ahead and save Mace Windu and Anakin just in the nick of time. And heck, I mean, just a few seconds later, they'd be dead. Oh, Chosen feeling the need to do that. Well, anyway, let's move on. Let's finish up season 2 here. Lethal Trackdown. Now, in a rarity, the end episode of this arc is actually the best. So here you go. Back earlier, we actually had a few hostages taken. So Admiral Killian and 2 clones were taken hostage. Now, Boba Fett, not too happy about the whole hostage taking or the violence against them. And so this creates a bit of a problem. And to the point that there's going to be a whole hostage video going out and done live. And Aura wants Boba Fett to go kill CT-411. And Boba Fett refuses. Oh man, I mean, Aura not happy about that, that's for sure. Guess what? Mace Windu's too injured to really go track him down. So we get Ahsoka and Plo Koon to go find where the bounty hunters are and rescue Admiral Killian and the other clone. And hey, we get to see the true underworld of Coruscant for the first time, really head on down there. Really loved that. I'm looking forward to seeing some more of it. I can't imagine we won't see more during the course of the series. And hey, in the meantime, the bounty hunters head off to Florum, another nice new little planet for us. And hey, Hondu's back, and apparently there's some interesting history between Hondu and Aura, because Hondu used to work for Aura, but they seem to have had a relationship. Oh, there's a whole weird little mess. And I imagine we'll get to see some more of it later. We didn't see a whole lot here. But we just put a little more in pieces for that. Some more threads to explore in future seasons. Anyway, in the meantime, Castus goes ahead and tries to betray Aura, and Aura just goes ahead and shoots him. Boom, done. But Castus's attempt to betray them still ends up leading Plo Koon and Ahsoka over to them eventually. Ahsoka's busy trying to be more subtle, as Plo Koon says, and actually picks up on some of the whispers and finds where to go, which was nicely done. I do love Hondu's actions, the whole staying neutral and kind of staying out of it. Just his character and getting to see a little of what makes Hondu Hondu. One thing I'm curious to see, why does Aura care so much for Boba Fett? Why is she willing to do so much to help Boba Fett get revenge? It's not answered in this episode or the two before it. And I'm curious to find out what that answer will end up being. Looking forward to that because I'm sure it's going to come up later. Oh, and as much as she cares, she did have to kind of abandon Boba because Plo Koon kind of got him and, well, he's a Jedi and, well, you kind of screwed. Even though that leaves Boba Fett feeling very abandoned and alone. And, oh, we do get a really cool final fight between Ahsoka and Aura. I mean, that was a cool fight over on the ship. I mean, Ahsoka freaking takes down the entire ship, which goes off into the distance and explodes. So that way we are left to think that Aura must be dead because we saw that explosion. I mean, I'm sure she's not, of course. If you don't see someone die, they're probably not dead. And even if you do in a sci-fi, that doesn't mean they necessarily are anyway. So the whole episode ends with Bossk and Boba Fett being captured. And Boba Fett does admit that he did some things wrong. But of course, nasty evil Windu started and killed my father, and I will never, never Freeling forgive you. We're definitely not done seeing Boba Fett. There is no way we're not seeing some more of Boba here later on at Aura 2, I'm sure. And I can't wait to see some more of Hondu and Bossk. I mean, we barely touched Bossk during these 3 episodes, but I definitely look forward to seeing some more Bossk. I mean, heck, I got to know him a little more in the original EU way back. There were some good stories with Bossk. Well, anyway, so that episode, definitely a better way to conclude it than either of the 2 before it would have been. And I enjoyed that one, and there's so much potential being set up within that episode and these bounty hunters. So, okay, Season 2. Wow. That's what I have to say about Season 2. On average, it was definitely a considerable improvement over Season 1. And I certainly don't just mean visually. Heck, there are 6 episodes out of these 20 in Season 2 that I thought were on par or better than my favorite episode in Season 1. And frankly, that's really saying something. And also, let me say, none of these episodes in Season 2 were as bad as the worst of Season 1. So if this is the way it's going, great. We're getting more into our characters in this season. We're getting more into the galaxy as a whole and the different worlds and the nuances. And it really feels like there's a whole bunch of story threads that are starting up in multiple places in this season that we're going to start to explore more. So I definitely loved Season 2. So thanks for sticking with me so far through my journey through Clone Wars. Now next week we're going to start into Season 3. Now I've long heard the show starts getting really good once you hit Season 3. So you gotta believe I'm quite excited as I'm really loving the show so far. Definitely come on back next week for some more Clone Wars with me. Oh, and until then, let me do the usual and say, hey, what about you? Did you think Season 2 of the Clone Wars was better than Season 1? What was your favorite episode in Season 2? Let me know down below in the comments. And thanks for watching. If you like the video, you all have heard this before, you know what to do. Click that good old like button, share with some people who will too, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you back here tomorrow for another new episode of Freeform Disney. Have a magical day, everyone, and may the Force be with you always.